Alright, put on your thinking caps. Maybe take a swig of liquor. This is A World of Difference, Season 1, Episode 23. The teleplay and the story written by Richard Matheson. And I can't help watching this episode that this needs the guiding hand of Rod Serling a little bit to tighten up the script. So Richard Matheson is great at coming up with original, intriguing ideas, but I really do prefer the tightness of Rod Serling's scripts. He moves things at a faster pace, and this really has one fatal flaw in it that brings it below an average episode, despite having a very intriguing concept. Richard Matheson, of course, is the writer of I Am Legend, Hell House, The Shrinking Man, and I would compare his writing to something like Michael Crichton, where he has such great ideas. Michael Crichton has some of the best ideas that have ever come up with. This guy came up with Jurassic Park, the Andromeda Strain, Congo. One of my personal favorites, Timeline. The intro to Timeline is one of my favorite pieces of fiction ever, where he literally makes you believe that time travel is possible. However, like Michael Crichton, who is undoubtedly a great writer, Richard Matheson's ideas are better than his writing. His writing is good, his ideas are amazing. Michael Crichton's writing is good, his ideas are A++. So with this episode, released March 4th of 1960, we get a Truman Show involving around a guy named Arthur Curtis. Or maybe his name is Reagan. Since Arthur Curtis is an actor, and he's on the soundstage filming a television show. Seems like a homely, Leave It to Beaver, nice early 60s G-rated television show where he has a nice wife and a nice family. And as soon as he gets off this set, he suddenly thinks that he's someone else. People are calling him Regan, who is playing the role of Arthur Curtis. Yeah, that's a bit meta. My interpretation of this is that he's an actor, and his home life, which we'll see in a second, is so terrible that he's decided to take on this acting role and become that person. But you could interpret it another way too. This is the Twilight Zone, of course. Maybe everyone around him is trying to drive him crazy. But either way, he spends 15 minutes wandering off this soundstage, going home, and we do get to see some behind the scenes footage of what a real film set would look like, a la Sunset Boulevard. I always like scenes like that because they're more interesting watching in 2026 than they would be in 1960. Because you're like, oh, is that what film sets actually look like? Is that what Sunset Boulevard looked like? But he spends 15 minutes just telling people,
I don't know who you think I am, but you're wrong. My name is Curtis. Arthur Curtis.
So is he Gary Regan, a drunken failing movie star? Or is he Arthur Curtis, just an everyday businessman? And once Arthur goes back to his home, he finds that everyone's calling him Gary Regan, nobody's calling him Arthur Curtis, and his wife, while being very, very hot, he's a movie star of course, is very demanding and keeps talking about how she's going to take his money. So basically, his life at home is in hell, which makes me think that this actually is an actor who would prefer to take on the role of this fictional TV character he plays. So this is a good idea, and you can see how a fair amount of actors have drug problems. Maybe they don't want to step off set. Maybe they're like, hey, just keep the cameras rolling. Let's do more of this. I don't want to go home. My boyfriend's abusive. I live with my parents and they're terrible. I have a drug addiction. Let me just keep this set rolling and I'll just continue this fantasy that I'm in this idealistic world on this film set with a perfect wife and family. So I'm going to give this episode a 4 out of 10. Great concept, but too much of the time is just him telling him he's not Gary Regan. Like he says this probably 100 times in the episode. It's like, we get it. Oh man. Really, you could watch the first 2 minutes of this episode and watch the last 3 minutes of this episode and get all the plot. It ends in a very Twilight Zone-y way that's left up in the air. He disappears and goes on vacation. So it doesn't completely get resolved, but that's okay. The point is, he's confused, you're going to be confused, and it's up to interpretation, which I think is perfectly fine. But 2 minutes of the episode is him just constantly telling people he's someone else and not moving forward the plot whatsoever up until the end. Arthur Curtis also suffers repercussions for his actions as well, because this TV show that he's on ends up getting canceled because the people around him think he's acting irrationally, believing that he's not another person and acting mentally unstable. So there are consequences to his actions as well. In his mind, they're wrong. He's really Arthur Curtis, and in their mind, he's really this guy named Reagan. And we see them tear down the set, which is maybe a metaphor for his life being torn down. But then it actually ends on a pleasant note with him going on this plane trip to escape all this. But this would need a 1-hour podcast with Richard Matheson for him to explain this. Back in 1960. His gold-digging wife Sally was played by Gail Colby, who was in episodes of Gunsmoke and Mannix, but really Her career took off when she decided to get into the lucrative game of producing soap operas, like all the big ones. Days of Our Lives. She produced from 1975 up until her death in 2014. The Bold and Beautiful, Guiding Light, and one I never heard of called Return to Peyton Place. She did 422 episodes between the years of 1972 and 1974. How is that possible? Gotta give it up to the soaps. Not only overly dramatic, but also having poor acting, because these actors get one take and are reading off cue cards half the time. Next up is episode 24 of season 1, Long Live Walter Jameson, one written by my favorite Twilight Zone writer, Charles Beaumont, about a guy that's lived a million lifetimes and never ages, and it's a much better episode. Check out our playlist for the other series that we've covered. We're doing every single episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, Black Mirror, Mystery Science Theater 3000, and The Twilight Zone. Thanks.